Hi everyone. If you remember in the previous tutorial, we discussed about what is a class, and we also discussed about the two main components of a class, variables and methods, right? In this tutorial, we are going to discuss about how we can create a class, or I can say how we can code a class. We are also going to discuss about a method, that how we can create class methods. So we'll discuss about both of these things, the syntax of creating a class and the syntax of creating a method. And we'll also discuss what is variable and what are methods. Again, this is already covered in the method syntax, but we'll discuss about what are class variables as well, and how we can use a class and how we can define object of a class. Let's begin. First of all, we need to understand a syntax. The class syntax is as follows. We have a keyword class, and then we have the name of the class. After that, we have an opening curly brace and a closing curly brace. And between this opening and closing curly braces, we define the variables of a class and we also define the methods of a class. So this opening and closing curly brace basically defines the body of the class, and within this body, we have the variables and we have the methods. Now, before we jump on to actually defining a class, let's see how we can define a method as well, because we are going to define methods inside the class, right? And we are already aware about variables because we have created integer variables, we have created boolean variables, we have created string variables in the past, right? So we know how to declare a variable. But what we don't know is how to declare a method or how to define a method. So let's see the method syntax as well. The syntax of defining a method is as follows. First of all, we have the return type. Return type will basically tell us that what is the type of data that this method is going to return. For example, if you remember in the previous tutorial where we were learning about list and set and map, things like that, we used to call the size method on the list. So how we used to do that? We used to do that like we have the list name. So I should say list name, and then we used to call the size method on it like this. And what was the return value here? It used to give us an integer which is nothing but the size of the list. For example, 5. So what this return type is going to tell us? This return type is going to tell us what our method is going to return, or I can say what type of data our method is going to return. For example, if I talk about this size method, it is going to return the data which is nothing but integer. So the return type should be integer, and the value which it is returning in the current case is 5. It will be more clear as we define a method, but for now you can just consider that in this example, the method name is nothing but size, and then we have this opening and closing brackets. We also discussed about this in the previous tutorial, and after that we have this opening and closing brace which will define the body of the method. Like we have the body of the class, in a similar way we have the body of the method, and the body of the method is nothing but another some lines of code which is going to do the operation that we want to perform. And in this case, or I can say for this particular example, the return type of the size method should be integer. Now let's actually create a class so that it's more clear to you. I'm going to take the same example of a car that we discussed in the previous tutorial, and we are going to create a class named car. So let's see what we have done. As we discussed earlier, we have the keyword which is class, then we have the name of the class which is car here, then we have the opening curly brace, and we have the closing curly brace. Between this opening and closing curly braces, we have nothing but the body of the car. So between these braces, we have the body of the car, or I can say body of our class. Not really body of the car, it should be body of our class. Now we talked about member variables and methods inside our class, right? So these are nothing but member variables, and after that we have methods which are present inside our class. Okay. So if you remember in the previous tutorial, we discussed about these three properties of our car, that we can have a color of the car and we can have the seater of the car, that whether it's a 2-seater or a 4-seater car, and then we can also store the brand of a car, right? Because ultimately what our class is, it's a user defined data type. So our class car is nothing but a user defined data type which is going to store three properties, or I can say which is going to store three types of data. It is going to store the color of the car, it is going to store seater, how many seater the car is, and it is going to store the brand of the car. So if you see, the color of the car is going to be string, correct? It can be red, it can be blue, it can be yellow. So it is going to be string for sure, which is why we have defined a variable of type string and we are giving it the name as color. Now, seater is going to be 2-seater, 3-seater, 4-seater car, like that, which is why we have defined an integer variable and named it as seater. Brand of the car is again going to be a string because it can be Tata, it can be Tesla, it can be something else, right? Which is why we have defined a string variable here again and we named it as brand. Now we have already discussed variables and data types in the previous tutorials, so I'm not going to tell you how this variable is formed. I'm assuming that you have that knowledge now. And what we just did is simply we defined three variables, color, seater, and brand of different data types. And all this is a part of my class car. So these variables which are inside my class car, they are known as member variables. So they are known as member variables. After that, we have defined methods. And if you remember, what is the syntax of method? The syntax of method is return type, then method name, and then opening and closing curly brace, which will have the body of the method. And this body of the method is nothing but, again, some lines of code. So if you see right here, the return type for both of our methods is void now. Now, you might be thinking what void is, because we haven't heard about void till now. We have heard about integer, we have heard about string, we have heard about boolean, right? But we haven't heard about void. Just in case we have some lines of code, or I can say we have a method which is not going to return any kind of value, because you remember we discussed about the size method, which is going to return us some integer, right? So it is returning a value to us. It can be 5, it can be 10, something like that. So whenever we have a kind of method which is not going to return any value, okay, then the return type is void. Void basically means it is an empty hole, like a void. It is not going to return any kind of value to us, but it can still perform an operation. For example, the start method of the car is going to start the car, but it is not giving us any data. So we can say that the start method is going to start the car and it is not going to return us any kind of data, which is why we have kept the return value as void, or I can say the return data type as void. Inside this method, what we have, I have a simple debug statement for now, which is saying car started. And similarly, we have a honk method as well. And this honk method is also not returning us anything. So it is not returning us any data. But what we have is we have another system.debug which says honk honk. As simple as that. Now let's see how we can create a car, and we'll see if the data is getting stored inside the car or not. And by creating a car, I mean creating an object, which is an instance of this class car. Now, we discussed it in the previous tutorial, right? That whenever we have to create a variable of a particular data type, we can simply say the type of variable name, or I can say the data type, and then we can create a variable name. Similarly, this car is nothing but our custom data type, right? Or I can say a user defined data type. And whenever I want to create a variable of this type of data, or I can say car type of data, what I can do, I can follow the same syntax like I have in case of integer and string. So I can simply say car and then my car. So this is the data type, which is nothing but car, and this is my variable name, which is nothing but my car. After that, what I have done some extra part, which is equal to, and then I have said new, and then car. And then I have this opening and closing brackets followed by a semicolon. What this is doing, this is basically initializing some space in the memory. So I can say that if I don't do this part, let's say if I just say car and my car, and then I can create a semicolon, just this part, okay? So in this case, it won't create some space in the memory. And in this case, my variable will be null, right? Because we have discussed this in the previous tutorial as well, right? That if we create a variable and if we don't assign it any value, then by default, the value is null. So this is going to create a variable whose value is null. But what we want a variable which has some empty boxes inside the memory where we can fill our color, our seater, and our brand. We want these empty boxes to be present inside the memory. So for that purpose, what we have done, we have said car my car is equal to new and car. And this new car followed by parenthesis is doing nothing but creating these empty boxes inside the memory. So I can say that this whole box inside the memory, it represents a car, and it has three boxes, one to store the color, one to store the seater, and one to store the brand. So this box is going to store a string, and this box is going to store how many seater the car is, and this box is going to store, let's say, what is the brand of the car. So doing this new car and then empty brackets and then a semicolon, it is doing nothing but it is creating this empty box inside the memory so that we can store values inside it. Now once we have this empty box, what do we want to do? We want to store the color, the seater, the brand, right? So what we can do, we can simply say my car, which is the variable name, dot color, because it is a property of my variable, right? Or I can say it is a property of my car. So I can refer to the variable names, or I can say the member variables of my class by using a dot. So using this dot notation, I can refer to the variables which are present inside my class. So I can simply say my car.color is equal to blue because color is string. So I'm assigning a string value to this color variable. So I'm saying the color of my car is blue. So what I did here, I simply said that, hey, store this blue in the color of my car, or I can say in the color variable of my car. So this is of type string, but the variable name is color, right? So it is storing blue here. Then what I did, I simply said my car dot seater is equal to 4. Now I know that seater is integer, right? Which is why I'm assigning an integer value. And what I'm saying go to the integer box, or I can say go to the seater box and store the value 4 inside it. And after that, I'm simply saying my car dot brand is equal to Tesla. So what I'm saying here, I'm saying go to the brand box and store the value Tesla there. Okay, that's how it is. And after that, what we did, we simply said system.debug my car is equal to, and then I'm displaying the value of this variable. So first of all, let's execute the code till here and let's see how it works. I can select the whole code from here till here and I can execute it. So if you see what I'm getting here, my car is equal to, so I'm getting my car is equal to, and then I have displayed the value of my car variable. So this car variable is nothing but it represents a class car, and this car has 3 properties. It has a brand, it has a color, and it has a seater. So if you see here, we have 3 properties: color, seater, and brand. And the values which I assigned are brand is Tesla, color is blue, and seater is 4. And you can see it right here as well. Color is blue, seater is 4, and brand is Tesla. So these are the values which I assigned to these variables, and all of these values are together stored in a data type of type car. And this data is stored in my variable, which is my car. So this is how a class is storing all the data together. Now let's talk about member methods, or I can say the methods which are present inside our car. So for now, we define 2 methods here, start method and honk method. And what we did here, we simply said mycar.start and mycar.honk. It is very similar to saying that, I have a list and I'm doing list name and I'm saying dot size. So it is very similar to doing that. Let's execute this whole code and let's see how it works. So if you see, my car is equal to my car, it is coming absolutely fine. My car is equal to my car. Then I said my car.start. And what I'm getting in the output, I'm getting car started. How I'm getting this output? I'm getting this output from this particular method where I have written car started. So whatever code is present inside the start method, it is getting executed as I called my start method on the variable. So as I called this start method here on my variable, which is my car, the whole code which is present inside the method is getting executed and I'm getting this output which is car started. So even if you have 10 more debugs here, or let's say even if you have some other lines of code, that whole code will be executed. Similarly, you can see another example. So I did my car.honk, and what it did, it printed an output which is nothing but honk honk. And this honk honk is nothing but in the body of my honk method, I defined this code which is saying honk honk. So the whole code which is inside my honk method is getting executed and I'm getting the output as honk honk as I called the honk method on my variable. So this is how very simply you can define the member variables and you can define the methods which are a part of your class, and you can store some custom data, or I can say you can store any kind of data that you want to store together, because this whole data, or I can say this whole color seater brand, it represents a particular car, right? And you can create multiple objects for different cars. Before we end this tutorial, I want to mention one important point, which is a class also helps you to store your code in Salesforce. Till now, what we have learned? We have learned that we can write some code, right? And then we can select that code and then we can execute that code on the fly. But you cannot do that again and again, right? Because you are going to write a lot of code. Let's say you're writing 1,000 lines of code with multiple classes or something like that. So you need some place to store all that code so that you don't have to, write it, or you can say you don't have to keep that everything in a text file like this, and you don't have to select it again and again and then, execute it. So what you can do, you can store this whole class inside Salesforce, and then you can refer to it again and again wherever needed. Let's see how we can do that. First of all, I'm going to do that using Salesforce. So what we can do, we can just go to setup and we can say developer console. Now here you can go to file, you can click on new and then Apex class. So you have an option to create Apex class here. Okay. And it is asking us, please enter the name of your new Apex class. Now what is the name of our class? The name of our class is car, right? So I can simply say car and I can press OK. Now if you see, it has created a new class and it is saying public class car, and this is empty by default. Now what I can do, I can select this whole code, or I can say the body of my class. I can copy it and I can paste it inside this class. So if you see, we have got all this nice formatting and we're getting all the variable data types in a different color, like string, integer, and have the methods and we have the member variables as well. In case you are having any problem in your code, you will find it here inside the problems tab. So if you see right now, I don't have any problem. And let's say if I simply remove this semicolon and if I try to save it, so now you can see I'm getting some problems here. So it is saying unexpected token brand, unexpected token brand, unexpected token void, things like that. And this is coming because I don't have any semicolon here. So I should have a semicolon after the variable name. So I can simply place it back and I can save it. And now if you see, I don't have any problem and my class is saved. Just in case you are wondering about this public, I just want to mention that this public keyword mainly means that you can use this class anywhere in Salesforce. It simply means you can use this class, or I can say you can create an object of this class anywhere, or I can say in any code that you're storing inside Salesforce or executing inside Salesforce. Now that we have stored this car class inside Salesforce and we have made it publicly visible as well, we also want to make our color, seater, and brand variables publicly visible because we are referring to it, right? For now, even if it's not clear, that's fine. I have a separate tutorial on this, but you can just understand that I want to refer to color, seater, and brand, which is a part of car. So I want to refer to this using my variable, which is why I have to make them public. This was not the case when I'm selecting everything and using it, because that's something which I've defined there. But now I can use it anywhere inside Salesforce because I have stored it, which is why I need to define that these variables are also public. So I can simply say public string color, public string brand, and public integer seater. And similarly, I'm going to make these methods public as well. So I can say public void start and I can say public void honk. Why I have added public all over the place? That's just because I want to refer to these variables using my variable name, which is the variable of my class car, and I want to refer to these methods using my variable name as well. We'll discuss all this in detail in the next tutorial, but for now, let's just understand what it did. So till now what we are doing, we are selecting this whole code and we are executing it, right? Now I have stored all this code in Salesforce. And what I'm doing, I'm using my car variable, or I can say the variable which is of my custom data type or user defined data type car, and I'm referring to the variables which are present inside it using this particular variable. So I'm referring to color, seater, brand using this particular variable which is my car. Similarly, I'm referring to methods like start and honk using this variable which is my car, which is why I have made them public. And now that I have stored this class car in Salesforce, I don't need to select the whole code from here till here. I can simply execute this particular code. So let's select this code and let's try to execute it. And if you see here in the output, I'm getting the same output here. So I'm getting my car is equal to car, where the brand is Tesla, color is blue, and seater is 4. So this is coming absolutely fine. And if I go down, it is saying car.start is called, and here I'm getting the output. So if you see another debug statement, here I'm getting car started, and if I go down, car.honk is called, and here I'm getting the output which is saying honk honk. We can also execute the same code using developer console. So I can select the whole code right here. I can go to my Salesforce org. I can go to debug, open execute anonymous window, and here I can paste the code and let's say open log, and I can simply execute it. So if you see, the code is executed successfully. And because I want to see only the debug statements, only these debug statements, right? What I can do, I can simply click on this checkbox which is saying debug only. So I can simply click this checkbox, and if you see, we have the output here. So I'm getting the same output. The car name is my car, where the brand is Tesla, color is blue, seater is 4. Then we started the car, and then we press the horn of the car. So you understand what we are doing here. We are storing different types of data at a single memory location in our custom data type. We are executing different code snippets by storing the codes inside methods. And in order to store it in Salesforce, we created a class and we stored it in Salesforce. And then we made everything public so that we can call it using this variable. We made it public because we are calling it outside the class in some other code. Or I can say we are referring to it outside this class, not inside this class, in some other code. We are going to discuss this in detail in the next tutorial, but for now, what we are going to do is that we are going to delete this car class and we are going to create it again using VSCode. So we can simply go to File and we can say delete, and then I'm going to delete this class. So this class is deleted now, and just to show you that it is deleted, what I can do, I can simply execute this code once again. So if you see, it is saying invalid type car because this class is no more present. Now what we can do, we can create this class using VSCode as well. So what we can do, we can simply go to command palette by pressing command shift P on Mac or control shift P on Windows, and we can say class. So here you see we have an option create Apex class. You can press enter, and here you need to give the class name. The class name is nothing but car. You can choose the default directory, press enter, and here you can see we have some boilerplate code. For now, we are going to remove this part. So let's just say public class car in a similar way like we had. We can remove this as well, and we can simply say this is the body of our car, right? So this is the body of our car, and what we can do is that we can just simply add public to it. So we can say public string color, public integer seater, public string brand, public void start, and public void honk. I can save it, and in case you don't have this automatic deployment setup, you might need to just right click and you can do deploy this source to org, okay, in order to deploy this car class to your Salesforce org. Now once you have done it, you can simply execute this code and it will work absolutely fine because you have stored this code inside Salesforce, okay. And similarly, you can execute this code from your VS Code as well. So I can do the same thing from here too. And if you see, this is working absolutely fine. I'm getting honk honk, I'm getting car started, and I'm getting my car as well. And even if you deploy it using VS Code as well, right, you can still open it using developer console. So you can simply go to your developer console, you can go to file, open, and here you can see you have the class car. I can simply refresh it. Under classes, you have car, and you can double click to open it, or you can simply press open as well. So you can see I have the same code right here. So that's how you can create classes and objects in Salesforce. I hope this tutorial is clear to you. Let me know your feedback in the comments down below, and I'll see you next time.